Y'all know the drill. Some of y'all know the drill. Description of what is energy healing, prayer of gratitude. No, description of what is energy healing, 3 minutes of silence. Do I know the drill? 3 minutes of silence, prayer of gratitude, and then brief review of yesterday, and then into today's session. So let's do it. Energy healing is a technology of consciousness, basically. Maybe the word technology is too hoity-toity. I don't know, but it means essentially that we're using consciousness to affect changes in matter. And we're coming from the angle that matter is essentially consciousness only concentrated, right? And that everything is made of consciousness, everything. And that consciousness in its pure, most essential form is unmanifest, eternal, qualityless, divine. And that it shows up, it starts to appear as many in order for it to evolve. And through its evolution, humanity comes into being. We have this like vital role that we play in the process of universal evolution, and that's why we exist. The big question, you know, like why do humans exist or something? And like, well, there it is, that the one source of creation that wanted to create the whole universe needed something like a human nervous system. It needed nervous systems. That's why we're having a healing for the nervous system today. Nervous system is a really useful, valuable tool. It interfaces with consciousness, right? It is the part of our body that interfaces with consciousness most directly, in most detail, most completely. Well, the whole body is consciousness, but the nervous system, it acts a lot like a bridge. So it's about time we had a workshop for the nervous system, eh? Anyway, yeah. So we're using consciousness or awareness like a tool. And we've always used it like, you've always used awareness like a tool, right? Whatever you want to focus on, you move the awareness there, you move the awareness there, you move the awareness there. Wherever you want to focus the awareness, you just focus it. Like it happens so spontaneously, we're hardly aware of the fact that we are focusing our awareness because we just do it. And we've been doing it since the first moment we arrived in this world. God willing, we were not too drugged up at the time. But because it's so spontaneous, one of the features of energy healing is to pay a little closer attention to that spontaneous behavior, to actually look at it a bit and understand the laws of nature that are behind that spontaneous behavior, and understand why it is that when we focus attention on anything, that our attention has this effect of feeding it, of nourishing it, of supporting its growth and supporting its transformation, and looking deeply at those mechanics of transformation. Exactly how does the application of awareness make specific types of transformations and so forth. And I really got an amazing download in the last couple of weeks about this, which I haven't shared with anybody yet. I literally tried to make a video about it last night. And at the end of my video, I'm like, no, too cumbersome. I need to go at that again. So maybe today, maybe in today's session, I'll get a chance to kind of dig into that particular insight that came, because it was rich, it was beautiful, and I'd love to share it with you. And maybe after trying to do it last night and kind of failing a bit, oh no, that was the right way. You know, today I'll do a nice job. I hope I will. Anyway, one can always hope. Yeah, so the next thing that we're going to do is our 3 minutes of silence. And the reason we're going to do our 3 minutes of silence is because the source of creation is that infinite ocean of absolute pure silence. And it is the resource that fuels or feeds the healing process and the evolutionary process. And yesterday I talked a little bit about how the process of healing, like really deeply, fully healing, so that the way your consciousness interacts with the body promotes health, has correlations to the process of awakening or enlightenment. They're connections, because everything in creation is connected. But part of understanding, part of the process of understanding how energy healing works, brings us to the interface that also reveals how evolution of consciousness also works. And that's also another reason why we're having this webinar on consciousness in the nervous system, because the steps of enlightenment, the steps of awakening in the human condition are those of the experience of expansion of consciousness, and then the integration of that experience in the nervous system and consciousness working together to give rise to the development of higher states of consciousness. Eventually, that experience of infinite, unbounded, eternal wholeness is not lost, right? Because when the nervous system is so stable and so flexible, then it holds that experience at the same time that we're in the middle of activity and so forth. And I'll let the people who are experts on that speak on that note more, but I'm just touching on it because just in those places where it crosses over or interfaces with the healing process. It's good to have multiple angles. It's good to have people experts in different areas. Okay, enough chit chat. Let's go into that ocean of silence. Let's close our eyes and enjoy that silence. I'm going to mute, then I'm going to put my clock here, and then after about 3 minutes, I'll let you know that we've done 3 minutes of silence, and then I'll ask you to open the eyes and be sure to take a few moments. Don't just fly out of that silence like a cannonball out of a cannon, because we want to take enough time to actually integrate. This is part of what we're doing here, is integrating the silence with the nervous system, right? So a little extra time makes it a little extra good. All right, let's close our eyes. Let's take a moment and then gently, slowly open the eyes. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. Thank you for being each person participating in this webinar, and all the families of all the people, and all the friends and circles of relations of everyone here, and all of their circles, and all of their circles, and all of their circles out to the ends of the universe. Thank you for being the whole universe. Thank you for impressing the energy signature of the whole universe upon each one of our nervous systems. Thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom that connects, acts as a bridge of knowledge that connects that unmanifest eternal wholeness with the whole manifest field of creation. And thank you for our hour together. It's always just so enlightening for me to be here with you. I am always just deeply grateful for my connection with each of you. So grateful. Oh, and I think I'd like to add, thank you to the Mother of the Universe, as today is the first day of Navaratri, which is the big celebration of 9 days in the springtime when the Mother of Creation blesses our world, and just a little head nod and bowing down to that wonderful, incredible form, Devata form, Deva form of our universe. So beautiful. Okay, brief review of yesterday. If Dorothy can remember what she said. We did some healing for the autonomic nervous system, and we did great healing for this leg syndrome. What is it called? Restless, thank you, restless leg syndrome. We talked a little bit about the role of the nervous system and the consciousness together. I think at the beginning, there was a little bit of review of how the nervous system has this important role that it plays in both the healing and the evolutionary process. And we kind of reviewed that cycle of evolution. That's really important. And we didn't say anything too important. I didn't say anything too important. I was just enjoying being with all y'all. Yeah, it's a special time. It's a very special time. Got a lot of questions at the end, and I kind of promised that today I'd begin our session by looking at questions. But then when I went through the list of questions, it wasn't so many, but there's still really quite a fair number of questions. So I think, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the nervous system, and maybe this insight that I got, which I really am kind of excited to share with y'all, with everybody. I'm sounding so much like a Westerner, saying y'all. Anyway, and then maybe just go into the questions from there, something like that. Simple, and hopefully really good, and mostly oriented toward healing for the nervous system. So I think the first thing that I'd like to say about the nervous system that I didn't really get to elaborate enough yesterday is that we look to the physicality of the nervous system, and we look to the subtle level of the nervous system. And it's in the subtle level of the nervous system where the laws of nature, the mechanics of healing for the nervous system reside. So always in energy healing, we're looking to go to the seed core, the most fundamental level of whatever is the imbalance. And when we're talking about healing for the nervous system, each one of you has different specific needs. So the first part of this healing is just a general activation for the devata of the nervous system. That divine intelligence, that beautiful intelligence, which oversees and administrates the growth and the transformation of the nervous system, the way in which it integrates experiences of wholeness. I think I might have talked a little bit yesterday about experiences that are difficult or challenging. I think that was in the healing for the autonomic nervous system, you know, and how there was a nice shift in that one. I definitely recommend, it was near the beginning of yesterday's session as well, that that would be a nice spot to look at, because there was a nice, very sort of deep, very thorough transformation or healing for the autonomic nervous system in the way, based on the way in which it responds to difficulties, stress, challenges. And the main principle there was to utilize every human experience as an opportunity to create bliss in the nervous system and in the whole physiology, rather than, stress. And that reminds me, there was another healing yesterday also to support the healthy production of dopamine, which is produced in the nervous system. We had a nice discussion about that. And that was related to the restless leg syndrome. It is also very closely related to Parkinson's and other types of diseases in those families. And of course, dopamine is that neurochemical that we produce that makes us feel really good. So that's the neurochemical that talks to the autonomic nervous system and allows you to feel both enthusiastic and excited, and yet also very expansive and stable when life experience comes at any moment, whether it's just a simple quiet life experience or whether it's something really off the wall. The deva of the nervous system. Perhaps this is a nice spot to look at the download that I got that I wanted to share with you. First, just making sure that all channels are open so that everybody in this healing session receives the download directly as a wave of knowingness in the physiology. And then I will unpack it. Downloads always look like light. They look like a beam of light just coming like right into the body like that. Lots of juicy, very nice, very yummy stuff here to look at. When I was looking at the deva of the nervous system this morning, I was thinking, what is that energy signature of the deva of the nervous system? And lo and behold, what did I find? Individual ego. I found individual ego. I found that the energy signature of the individual ego and the energy signature of the nervous system, devata, seem to be almost perfectly aligned. You can find the devata of your nervous system by knowing yourself. So devatas and egos, they reside down in the causal level of the physiology. And of course, all energy healing takes place in that gap between the manifest and unmanifest. So understanding about the causal level is super important. Now, anybody out here who's an expert in anything, and I know a lot of you are experts in lots of things, like everybody's an expert in something, right? When you're an expert in something, what makes you an expert is that, or even if there's something that you're just interested in, okay, you don't have to be an expert, but having an interest in something drives you to uncover the laws of nature that are responsible for that area, whether it's, somewhere in the arts or the sciences and STEM, and maybe you're just an expert at appropriate social behavior, or maybe, we're all experts at something. Maybe you're an expert at making sure that your self-care regime is really, really good, right? The older we get, seems like the more we have to be expert in that. So, we're all experts in something. And even little children are experts at entertaining their parents, right? They're experts at being fascinating, being funny and adorable. We get to know the laws of nature. We get to know the laws of nature in that area. And the more we dive in and fathom the laws of nature in a particular area, the more we come to very deep universal laws of nature. The laws of nature that underlie not just like I've studied music all my life, but there's a lot of overlap between music and mathematics. And there certainly is overlap between, playing a musical instrument and it's particularly one where the airstream has to spin, with something like ceramics where you're making on a potter's wheel and the clay is spinning. There's certain laws of nature of spinning, right? And so there are all these places where all these laws of nature overlap with each other. You get into geometry and architecture. I had to really think about the engineering side of this story in order to make it all come together, because I had to take it apart and redo it several times in order to make it all like right proportions and relationships. And so, engineering overlaps with any kind of constructive arts, and under it all are these beautiful feelings. So the question is then how, and one of the points I made yesterday was how the surface level reflects the subtle level. There's a reflective effect that takes place. This wholeness and totality is reflected in the material level of creation, but then the material level of creation reflects back to wholeness. Oh, this is what you look like. And then wholeness looks and goes, no, not quite right. And then some bits and pieces get purified off. And then what's left after the pieces that we don't need are purified off is then integrated into the nervous system. Okay. So the Deva, I'm trying to get to this download. It's so crazy abstract, but anyway, here we go. Some of the laws of nature we have no control over. Some of the laws of nature we have, our consciousness can modify or work with those laws of nature to combine them in different ways. So you've heard me talk about regions of the causal field and how these regions are like resonating chambers that are shaped in such a way that specific laws of nature come out. Well, that's all nice and fine, but the question is, how does it apply? What is its applicability? So now we're going to look a little bit at some of the shapes and see how different shapes give rise to different combinations of laws of nature, and how you can use your awareness or attention to produce different regions of various shapes in the causal field in order to open up the blessings of different laws of nature. So every section of this manifest level has a little range. So the causal field isn't just flat, flat, flat. If we look in under the microscope, it's got a bit of a range there. And closer to the field of wholeness, the regions are more spherical. And closer to the surface, or closer to the astral level, which is just above the causal level, the regions take on various shapes. The spherical regions are clearly a closer reflection of totality. So if wholeness comes up and just reflects this much, it's just reflecting across the gap like that. Everything that it produces, every form that comes out, is going to look very, very much like the ocean of being. So these shapes, very, very close, they have more of a round, like a sphere, right? A spherical form. And as they go up, they flatten. They can flatten out. And as they flatten, they can get longer. And you can imagine as they get up into the level of the astral field, they become threads of the web of life. It's kind of simple, but it's kind of beautiful too, right? And on the in-between, they're all varieties of ways in which all of these regions of the causal field are anchored to wholeness or totality. And anchors can also have different shapes. Like an anchor could be a round anchor, like your cord of light, basically round. But some people's cords of light have other shapes, right? They can have a little bit more flat at the back, or they can truncate, right? Most people, it's sort of out and then it comes in like this. So the anchor itself can take on different shapes, and the different shapes will determine how the light of being shows up in those spaces. How did I find that? I found it because I love playing the flute, and being in Arizona has been very good for me as a musician. I've had the great privilege of studying with an excellent, excellent teacher. She's just like one step away from Jean-Pierre Rampal. Her teacher studied with Jean-Pierre Rampal. So it's like she really knows what she's talking about, and she's able to answer questions very concisely for me, which I appreciate. And we're able to go deep. You know how I think. We go deep into the mechanics of how do you take a shape. I just have my flute here just in case. I just have the mouthpiece. How do you take a hole like that? That's such a simple thing, right? Look at that little simple hole. And how do you interface that with lips and give rise to all the different sounds and the music that is produced on the instrument? It's completely phenomenal. It's the oldest instrument on earth, something like 30,000 years, 35,000 years, something like that is the oldest instrument on earth. So it's really a very profound thing, and it's really very close to totality, because we know that music has been around on this earth for a very long time, and we know that that which is closest to the truth lasts the longest. Music is part of every religion. It's part of human culture in every way. So I looked into those mechanics, and here's what I found. There's an inward and an outward stroke, yes? When the air goes through the instrument, there's an inward and outward stroke. Some of the air goes in and some of the air goes out. And in flute playing, you can make the pitch go lower frequency, right? Lower frequency. The more of the air goes in. And when I'm saying in on the flute, it's actually opposite of this one, because this is, you could imagine the flute as the field of boundaries. This is the field of the material field that constrains the laws of nature. It holds the laws of nature. It holds this incredible, effulgent flow of absolute consciousness into a little confined space. And that's what the relative material field of creation does. So the more I put my air in, the lower the pitch becomes. And the more I allow the air to go up and out, the higher the pitch becomes. And that this field of space all around me corresponds to and correlates with the infinite ocean of being. And it does the same thing with our respiratory systems, by the way, because all this air, right, we bring it in and it comes inside within the constraints of our physiology, within the boundaries and limitations of the individual. And then it goes through this whole purification process, and it integrates, some of the air, the quality, the values of the air stay with us, and what we don't need, we expel, etc. So it's really, the respiratory system is also a reflection of this. But I thought it was very interesting when I was going into that, of how if I go more in, right? I'm bending the note like probably a quarter or half a pitch, da, just by putting some of the air in or some of the air out. So what that means is with our awareness, and you can do this with your awareness, you can even try it now while we're talking, is that our awareness is never 100%, well, I can't say it's never 100% in or 100% out, but I think I can actually fairly say that, because 100% in is known as Mahasamadhi. Diving in is Samadhi, but 100% in would be Mahasamadhi. And if I go completely in, nothing, it's no sound. And if I go completely out, it's nothing, it's no sound. And when a person lives their life just completely, only the relative material level of creation, only, life tends to deteriorate very quickly. And if a person is just only in, well, then they stop eating and they stop taking care of themselves and they don't last very long. So we have to have a little balance. We always have a balance. And in music, you always have a balance, right? It's always not, it's never 100% in or 100% out. It's always a mix. And it is that point of mixture that is a key to the awakening process. Because ultimately the ability to mix so that you're experiencing this and you're experiencing that at the same time, that's a reflection of how the mechanics of the higher states of consciousness come into being. And if it's exactly 50-50, you get a very nice, like a nice clean, that column of air gets a nice clean cut. The other side of that story is the anchor. How do these forms, some of them are more round, some of them are more flat, and how they interface with this nice round shape. So this shape is also a reflection of wholeness or totality. And we use our, so this is what this is what our awareness is interfacing with. Our awareness is interfacing with this ocean of totality, which is, if there were a shape to define it, it would be a spherical shape or a circular shape. And what we do is we modify. We can make our own circle, and we can let our own circle interface with the circle of totality or wholeness, or we can flatten out the shapes. And when we do that, they start to pick up, this is very engineering and mechanical, but if I make a flat shape, some of my airstream is going to hit this far edge, but some of it's going to hit this bending edge, the edge that bends around on my flute. And that starts to give me like different qualities of sound that I wouldn't get if I just make a nice little round stream of air just coming straight up the middle of the flute. Then I get a very pure flute sound. But if I flatten out my lips, I get this more of like a buzzing, and it starts to pick up all the overtones. And then we start to hear the nuances of richness of the fractaline structure of music, the fractaline structure. It's like forms within forms within forms, like in a crystal, forms within forms. See, there's a crystal inside a crystal there. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if my camera can focus in on that very nicely, but you know, forms within forms. And if you look down at the molecular level, the crystal, you see, oh, the molecules are also the same form. Anyway, okay, so that was very intellectual. I'm not sure that that was how helpful that actually was, but I'm thinking about you guys, but thank you for bearing with me as I describe that. I have a feeling that more is going to come out about that as we're going along. But the important point here is that the devatas of the various systems of the body and the devata of the nervous system, you can think of them like the intelligence of our body and the intelligence of the lips, that it has this ability to shape itself lots of different ways. I can make the airstream all kinds of different shapes, not just flat, not just round, but in betweens, like round on top and flat on the bottom, and like that. I can make all different. So if I make it round on the top and flat on the bottom, the part that goes over the top of the flute that comes back into wholeness is round, and the part that goes up to the surface of creation inside the boundaries and limitations is picking up the overtones. So that's by creating different shaped anchors, we're actually able to harness the potential of the ocean of being to its maximum degree by addressing it with a round shape, and harness the maximum expressive potential of the relative by addressing it with a flat shape. Because the lips, they move independently. I'm just using music as an example, but I could use belly dancing as an example, or I could use ceramics as an example. Like, you could use anything. Those are other areas that I've studied, but you know, a mathematician could use math as an example. Like, it's just, I'm just using this because I'm really familiar with it, but the principles are the same. How do you anchor to wholeness? How do you anchor in? Do you come into wholeness straight in through kind of like nice circular form? Or do you maybe come in a bit at an angle like that? It's different every time. And it's different depending on the kind of music you want to play, right? The kind of expression you want to put into this relative material field of creation. How do we want to nourish and nurture our nervous system devas? Devatas, excuse me, Devatas are not used to being under the spotlight. They're not used to being under the spotlight that much. However, because of that, it's better to come in at an angle, right? If you just beam the spotlight straight in, it can be a little bit too much. And this leads me to something that happened yesterday that was quite phenomenal. I was thinking of it this morning, which was the entire session yesterday was overseen by this absolutely sweet, humble, soft, almost unnoticeable, but present, like consistent energy of compassion. So throughout the whole, started right at the beginning of yesterday's session, this feeling of this just tender compassion that was very humble and very quiet and not full of itself in any way, but just very kind of consistent. And by the end of the session, it was reminding me a little bit of a tidal wave, right? Because it just kept going and going and going. It kept building up on itself. And this is the way the nervous system loves to integrate wholeness. It loves to integrate with this. It doesn't want to be overwhelmed. Our nervous systems want to be treated very gently. When people are very young, there's more resilience and they don't mind a little, like, whoa, sometimes. They don't mind a little intensity. But in the long run, the integration of wholeness is something that we want for our whole lives. We don't want it just from like a big sort of flashing experience, but something more that's just present and is present and is present like that. So that flow of compassion, even just mentioning it, I can feel it sort of returning into today's session. And there's such a humility with it. And I feel that the nervous system is like that. You know, the nervous system is very delicate. Well, I guess the brain takes up a lot of space. You put all the nerves together, you get a fairly large structure in there. But for some reason, as I'm looking out across the field of our whole entire collective, I'm seeing a quality of humility associated with the nervous system. It's because the work of the nervous system is, it goes so like under the radar. For it, the movements of the nervous system are exceedingly fast. And that means that generally speaking, we don't consciously dig in to the experiences so tightly. It's just it's a subtle energy. And I'm just feeling that energy. Hold that energy signature. It's very abstract, but it's very much a reflection of your essential nature, your essential true self. the energy signature of the Devata of the nervous system, is deeply integrative. It's deeply integrating at this time with sense of self. Nervous system, sense of self. Clearing. Feeling remorse. Remorse is so good. It's such a good tool for energy healing. It balances out mistakes and karmas from the past. And when that remorse comes up, it also comes along with forgiveness. So remorse and forgiveness are like friend energy frequencies. They work together. And they work together to, the remorse works to cultivate discrimination and refinement in conscience. And the forgiveness elevates the frequency of energy within the whole system. It blesses. It's like a kind of blessing. Forgiveness is a kind of blessing. Those energies are going into the nervous system, into the Devata of the nervous system, into the gap between your consciousness and your conscience and your nervous system. Because there are times, we've all had times, when either intentionally or unintentionally, we've exposed ourselves to something that wasn't so good for the nervous system, right? That's where all the anomalies show up in each person's nervous systems. And some people, the people who are receiving this healing in the most sort of enriching way, in the sort of the thickest, most loving way, are those who have found themselves in situations where the choice was to sacrifice the physiology for the sake of some other need. And feeling that stress of that going deep down, it's like a thread of, it's like a core of stress, maybe through the central nervous system. It goes all the way down to the solar plexus, and even below the solar, they feel it going down into the navel area and down into the chakra at the base of the spine, down into the pelvic floor. And this is a point where so much love and acceptance is awakening in the being. So much ability to hold yourself, for the conscious awareness to turn in and look at the nervous system, and just like vows of love and support and protection and adoration and recognition, like that. I will always take care of you. I will always take care of you. And that feeling is like a little sutra, a little mantra or something. It goes deep down into the belly area. I'm really seeing very activated the area between the solar plexus and the navel. Right in there is an in between. Oh, and that relates to one of the questions that came in fact. That's good. We wanted to do a healing for that area of the body. Right in the area of the duodenum, where the stomach meets the intestines, like right in there. It's such a point of delicacy, and there's a vast amount of judgment, and really it's coming out as self-judgment is coming out of that area. Really a lot is being released from there. And this seems to be connected to or related to anybody who's been exposed to some kind of really heavy-duty toxins as well. So that means pharmaceuticals that might have been very toxic, or any other types of toxins that are in the body. A lot of fear is also being released along with this energy of self-judgment and fear. And that's reflected back, like underneath the self-judgment and fear is a feature of the sense of self of being like thinking of oneself. And this thinking of oneself, by the way, it goes back thousands of years, thousands of years. So it's a very old energy that's been held and hidden. You know, when these deep energies are there, they go under the radar, and then we don't even really realize them, but it's a kind of like a self-righteousness, which goes along with the self-judgment thing, right? There's this kind of self-righteousness and this sense of oneself as being sort of fiercely defending what is right, fiercely defending. But the problem is that what shows up at the surface of creation is only a reflection of what's happening deep at the source of creation. So sometimes what we think is right is only like a little slice of the picture of absolute truth. And I mean, all of us are working through, here it comes back to the nervous system, we're working through our nervous systems, and our nervous systems are designed to only take in a slice of reality. Our senses of perception, right, are all sort of separate from each other. You know, what the eyes do is quite different from what the ears do, and quite different from what the nose does, and the tongue and the skin. It's also parts of the nervous system. You could say, well, those are really parts of the sensory system. But from my perspective of energy healing, the sensory system is intimately connected to the nervous system, because for each organ of sense, there are different cortices in the brain where those information from those senses is processed, and the brain is kind of built, you know, it's got this sort of core that experiences feelings in a very kind of intimate and nuanced way. And then it's got the outer cortices that are, you know, there are a lot of different functions that they do, but one of the main things that happen in these outer cortices is the processing of experience, perception, perceptual input. Just looking into that, looking in and feeling that, feeling the awareness between this area between the navel and the solar plexus. It's still very lively. I feel it very lively. Another energy that's peeling off there is a kind of feeling of sickness. And it occurs to me that there's some, at either in utero or at a very, very early age, there could have been some exposure to some kind of serious toxin that's responsible for this, for the lady who asked the question about this part of her body. Because it looks like the effects of a toxin to me. That's been a long time. And the toxin came in, it was the byproduct of the karma of this self-identification that at the time seemed quite right. And maybe in ancient days, it was very good to be very self-righteous and be kind of harshly judging other people and yourself. The problem is that it's one thing to be harshly judging other people and feeling justified and coming down hard on them or something. But then when you make a mistake, which of course you will always, we always end up making mistakes at some point or another, right? Because that's just the nature of the learning process that humans go through. Then all of a sudden, if that's the person's a fundamental makeup, if that's how they know themselves, then all of a sudden they have to be the subject or the object of their own judgment and their own patterns of punishing those who they feel are wrong. And that's very sad when that happens. One finds that the cycles of self-sabotage come in, and not feeling like you deserve to be happy, you know, or resourced or whatever. So all this is healing for the ego way back through time. And maybe in this lifetime, I mean, I would certainly hope that most of you in this lifetime are not really in that space anymore. But I'm bringing it up because we've all been in that space at some point or another as human beings, or our ancestors have been in that space as human beings. And it's clearing not just for us as individuals, but it's clearing in the collective as well. Well, this judgment that I'm making on another person, it justifies me being pretty rough on them being real hard on them, justifying, being hard on people. It's behind every war, right? That purification that was taking place between the solar plexus and the navel is now all the way up through the whole torso area and is being released to the whole torso area now. Now I'm feeling it up in the throat area as well. And there, the purification kind of rises up through the body and starts to incorporate the chest and the throat and all that. Of course, it activates that most intimate connection with the Mother of the Universe and that most profound level of compassion. And as that's happening, because of the nature of what we're doing in this workshop, that compassion from the Mother of the Universe is being cultivated in a very delicate manner, like in a very comfortable manner. Very, like I mentioned, as I mentioned before, very humble, very kind of tender, the way it's being received by the body, but very, very, very consistent. Very, very humble, but very consistent. Tender isn't even the best word. Humble and consistent is the energy that I'm experiencing from that thing. It's a very good energy. It's a very right on energy. Oh, look at that. It's an energy that counteracts qualities of like arrogance and self-righteousness and justification for, rough behavior on other people. Oh, look at that. We found a match. It's very nice. I love it when that happens. I didn't even see it coming. I'm just flowing with you guys. Well done, everyone. Well done. Well done creating the precise energy medicine or light medicine required to counteract this particular energy that stands behind the types of conflicts where people really get hurt. It's just what we need right now, isn't it? You guys are brilliant. I mean, we know that there are probably a lot of high thinkers in our world, very intelligent people who are putting their minds and their hearts and their intentions to how to organize collective behaviors for the very highest and best possible outcome with the current conflict that's taking place in our world. But you guys are actually providing the foundation. We as a collective are providing the foundation. It's on the level of feeling and it's powerful. And there, it also is moving a little bit like a tidal wave. It's very humble, right? And it's very consistent, but it's not stopping either. It just keeps going and going and going, washing over the fields of humanity that are experiencing that horrible fear and that feeling of that there's memories of being exposed to toxins, right? That was like part of previous events in certain parts of the world whose names I will not mention, but I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Offering the whole thing back to the eternal ocean of silence, to Mother Divine, to be blessed and cleansed and washed. Any part of anything that's produced in our group, that maybe some little piece of it seems good, but maybe in the course of millions of years, maybe it wouldn't be 100%. And so it's cleansed. The parts that are really of absolute true value are integrated. They're integrated into our own systems, into our own nervous systems, because we become the vehicle. Our whole physiology and the nervous system itself becomes the vehicle for this beautiful, beautiful feeling, this beautiful antidote, a beautiful antidote to arrogance and justification of cruel behaviors and. And the lack of the inward stroke, too much blowing into the instrument, not enough blowing over the top, too much blowing in, too much hot air going into the boundaries of creation, and not enough coolness. The air that comes out the top, it gets cooled off by the environment, not enough coolness. So that's shifting. That's what's shifting as this light medicine comes forward with us. It's shifting that at the field of the collective consciousness of our world. Nicely done, guys. Gosh, I've got to get to these questions because we don't have a huge amounts of time. So let's see. Okay, that was the restless leg. That was the description of this. Let's see, these are some questions from last night. Oh, what is behind fibromyalgia? That's a really good question. That's absolutely an illness of the nervous system. And my understanding, both from looking energetically and also working with people who have fibromyalgia and some internet exploration, kind of a combination of those, is that it's a byproduct of extra hypersensitivity in the nervous system. And not surprisingly, it's often experienced by people who are living in the world, and they're living at the more sensitive end of the spectrum of humanity. You know, some people are very resilient. Some people are very resilient, and they can go into and I'm not saying one kind of person's good, another kind of person's not good. Okay, all people, we're all different, but like some people can expose themselves to like dark things like horror movies. Horror movies are very famous kinds of movies in the United States. I don't know how it is in Europe, but in the United States, that's a thing that some people do. They like to go and they like to see things that make them scared or are sickening in some way or another, something like that. And some people don't. Some people just prefer not. And there's kind of a spectrum of how much a person's comfortable exposing themselves to in the way of, you know, negativity in the environment. And I've noticed that and it's just circumstantial evidence. There hasn't been any research done on, as far as I know, but that pretty much consistently all the people who've ever come to me with fibromyalgia have a kind of extra heightened sensitivity or awareness of the energies in their environment, and you know, more intuition, more empathy. They feel people's pain as well as their own, and under the skin, it's like the nerves, they create like extra sensors. They're extra sensors in the nerves through the body with fibromyalgia. So a lot of energy is being used in the sensory process, particularly sense of touch. And this is, it takes energy. It saps people's energy because they're getting more information than they actually need, essentially, or that's practical for them under the circumstances and the current conditions of our world, under the current conditions in which a person lives. So it's extra heightened sensitivity without the additional stability, So what we want to do for all the people, anybody who's participating today who has fibromyalgia, anybody on earth who has fibromyalgia, is we want to support again, it's a kind of an imbalancing of an inward and outward stroke process, support that sensitivity with stability. And the other thing that thank you to you guys, because that idea, stability and flexibility, both important, but you guys brought to me just now that what's also needed is an activation or like a kind of confidence in knowing that the nature of let me put that differently. Human nature is to interface with the darkness of this world and bring in the light. That's what we do. We look at the aspects appear at the surface that have manifested that maybe are not life-supporting, that need to be purified out. And we look so deeply into the mechanics of how the universe is created that we find wholeness or totality. We find the infinitely blessed, life-supporting energy of pure being, para Brahman. We find it in the structures of creation. And when we do that, we activate it. We activate that life-supporting value, and that helps to curb or turn the trajectory of change in whatever it is that we're looking at. Even if we're looking at world conflicts, when they look really bad, but the nature of our awareness, we're kind of still with that, aren't we? The nature of our awareness is to see what needs to be purified out and let it go, be able to let it go, and then integrate and stabilize all that is good. It's reminding me of being shell-shocked and how that the experience of those really blasting sounds near a person's body can disrupt the flow of neurological intelligence through the brain. I saw some scans, some brain scan of the brain of someone who'd been too much exposed to the blasting of shells versus a normal brain. And the one whose brain who's been exposed, it looks like someone went in and just stirred it. just stirred it all around, and it's kind of, whereas the person who hadn't been exposed, there are all these fabulous pathways, you know, channels of very, very fine, like threads, little threads, but they're there, they're present. And it's very possible that that's another feature with the fibromyalgia, is that the experience of that's just a normal experience for an average person feels a little bit too overwhelming. That's one of the features of having fibromyalgia. You feel overwhelmed. So the feeling of overwhelm is healed through the healing for the autonomic nervous system. And rather than going to a full-blown healing for the autonomic nervous system, we could cut in, if we want to use this as a cut for what YouTube, by the way, Tom, we can cut in the healing for the autonomic nervous system from yesterday, which you all will get access to anyway. And that's going to help the body respond to any kind of experiences that come up in a much more like friendly, robust, healthy, happy way, you know, to see the part that's good. And part of that process that I'd like to add in here is clearing out beliefs that associate malevolence with purification. It's a long, long tradition of not feeling comfortable or good about having to let go of stuff. And associating letting go with lack, right? Like poverty. All the relative, it goes up and down, up and down. So, and it responds to the winds that you blow through the field of life. The winds are the impulses of intelligence and creativity that come from the source of creation and come filtering through our nervous system, and through you, they come out into the environment and they touch our world. This is your music. This is your music. It is your gift, and it is priceless. That's where the wealth is, the priceless wealth. Very beautiful. Okay. All blessings to everyone who has or has ever had fibromyalgia. May that particular illness find its way out of our collective field. Okay, here's a lady who asked a question about solar flares and geomagnetics effect on the nervous system. She says she really feels it a lot when the sun does stuff, and it just happens that at this time, the sun is, there's some of the biggest solar flares that we've ever had are coming through right now, I think in the last day or so. And honestly, they also have a kind of disruptive, sometimes they can have a kind of disruptive effect, but on my experience with solar flares is that there's also a great value of solar wisdom, solar knowledge that comes to the earth at that time. So if we're wired up so that we're receptive to the parts of that energy that are life-giving, life-supporting, and also discriminating which parts would be like burning, right? Which would create a chaotic effect like the shell shock kind of effect. We have to be able to see through the whole thing because this is material. This is a material impact upon the earth. The information and wisdom and the discrimination required seems to be settling into the head area right here around the sinuses and the eyes. Of course, our eyes are really, really sensitive to electromagnetic energy. And we're clearing some fear from the limbic system, which is right behind the sinuses and the eyes. And then there's a line of energy that's coming down into the throat or neck area as well. Because the downloads that come from the sun also provide information regarding how to best apply our own intelligence and creativity, or we could say the intelligence and creativity from the source of creation through us to this world for better effects. Better effects. There is a light. There is a light in the sunlight. When the solar flare comes, it comes as like very more dense expression of solar energy, but also subtle expression of solar energy. And self, because sun represents the self or Atma, and Agni as well, the fire, the subtle fires of creation that are so essential for robust flow of energy in the body. Very nice activation for the more robust flow of energy in the body to also help those with fibromyalgia. Very nice. Everything is available. The sun is so health-giving, right? It's health and wealth-giving. So no surprise that some of the light coming from the sun would impact the nervous system and support a flow of energy-giving light into the body, especially that early Eastern morning sun. It's cool and refreshing and purifying and invigorating. The energy signature of it is embedding down into the solar plexus area. The part of the nervous system associated with the solar plexus is the celiac nerve. The celiac nerve is kind of a nerve cluster that's sitting there sort of right behind the sterna, right, not the sternum, but lower, a little bit lower, like behind the stomach. And that celiac nerve is directly related to the way we metabolize certain types of foods, especially gluten. So this will be a healing for the digestive system as well. And one of the thoughts I was having as I was getting ready to do this webinar was that there is a really intimate connection between the digestive system and the nervous system, not just because the two systems, form together in the womb. They're like, first it's a little round package, and then there's a round package with a space inside, and then the space becomes a tube, and then the space becomes two tubes, and one of them is the digestive system, and one of them is the nervous system, and the nervous system, of course, is here to feed the digestive system is here to feed the nervous system primarily. Okay, one lady is saying, so upgrades for the digestive system also, and we're running out of time, so I'm doing everything quickly. I'm not telling you as much about it. Just the energy is flowing and doing that. That tidal wave of beautiful, humble compassion continues to carry all the downloads and all the healings for everybody. One lady very graciously offered that magnesium with omega-3s taken together feed the nervous system, and I would definitely concur with that. That's a Beautiful suggestion if you're not onto that. Magnesium comes in about 16 different forms on the market, as far as I know. And Tom, can you make a note that we can send that information guide to magnesium to everybody? Thank you, my dear. I almost called him my love because he is my love. But anyway, he's helping me. Right, so we talked about the vagus nerve. And this one, best approach to the nervous system. It appears there's damage from PTSD or perhaps illness. It can seem as if there's a protective mechanism surrounding the nervous system that makes it tricky to even get close to it, let alone refine. Perhaps our powerful collective can create a healing to soften the overreactive protection mechanism, which can hopefully spread to the wider collective. Thank you for that beautiful, comprehensive question, and always so coming from a level of deep intellectual understanding of what we're doing, and also beautifully worded. Thank you. It occurs to me that the nervous system being such a delicate system, it's a very, very delicate system in the body, which may be why it's there's some correlation between the devata of the nervous system and the ego, the personal ego, because personal individual ego can also be very delicate, right? Like it has an important job to play, but it also sometimes, you know, can be easily damaged or something. So, but that, and we also have that blood-brain barrier, which is there in the physiology, which is kind of there to protect the nervous system. It's protected by the skull, right? So the hardness of the head is there to also protect this system of our body, which is very, very tender. Like even the circulatory system has, you know, it has structures of muscles around the veins and arteries. But the nervous system, it mostly has bones around it, right? The spine and the cranium, because it's so delicate. Like a jellyfish or something. It's very delicate. When I look into this question, it feels to me as if these self-protecting mechanisms that stop a person from, stop the awareness from getting into where it needs to go to clear out the imbalances or toxins. First of all, they have fear at their root. And here's another thing. This healing or this question, it sort of interfaces a little bit with the lady who had the question about the area between her solar plexus and her navel. There are some similarities, just letting you know. And that some of the work that we did for that healing also addresses this question, you know, clearing the fear, clearing the, these beliefs about oneself that basically form the seeds of everything that manifests for each one of us as individuals up at the surface. So there's self-beliefs, and what happens is the self-beliefs get set in by some event, and sometimes if they're set in by like an early childhood traumatic event or something like that, all that follows from the setting in of this idea of who I am, it camouflages the original seed. Then it's like we can't find the seed of it. And I think it's that seed, it's the seeds of self that sit deep in the sense of self, in the individual ego area, that are being protected. And they have to be protected because there are other aspects of oneself, and we did address this today, that feels very self-righteous. It feels like, you know, if something's bad, I'm going to go after it and I'm going to really take that thing out, something like that. I'm opening up the next question and answer box because we're making our way through. So we have the antidote, that the secret to revealing the seeds of self that are hidden or camouflaged, that are creating nothing but trouble at the surface, is to approach oneself with this level of consistent compassion. that creates a context of feeling completely safe within yourself. When you feel safe within yourself and with yourself, then you can look at the mistakes. You can look at whatever is going on at some subtler level of self that we were hiding from ourselves, we didn't want to see, and be able to just come in a very practical, very, very sort of straightforward, very gentle, sort of broadly comprehensive way, so that whatever is seen in the context of purification, or is seen in the context of the whole evolutionary cycle. You go in and you look at it and you go, well, this part doesn't seem so life-supporting, I can let that go. This other part over here is just golden, and I'm hanging on to that, right? If we come in with that big, I'm seeing a question come in that I really want to answer over here too, but if we come in with that larger perspective, it's possible for the individual self to not become victimized by one's own self-judgment, self-righteousness, feeling compelled to punish or self-sabotage. You know I love you. There it is. You just letting it go the way it can go, the way it needs to go. Good question. Thank you. The next question, I have so much honor and respect for this lady. She says, if appropriate, I mean, all of you I do, of course, but would you do this healing for carpal tunnel syndrome, the nerves going into the hands? Absolutely. Absolutely. So here, and this is something I really wanted to address in our workshop, and our webinar. I see we're over time, but I really wanted to address this question. So I wanted to address inflammation in the nervous system, inflammation in the tissues around the nervous system. And of course, with carpal tunnel syndrome, part of the story is that we tend to overuse, or kind of little bit, like I'm just saying this from my own experience too, because a few of you know that I went through a thing with my thumbs recently, but they're healed now. And so I was thinking of you. And one of the things I did was I got a voice to text app for my work, because I do so much computer work. I send so many emails, I do make so many reports. And so I'm many, many hours a day on my computer, and I have been for years, and I don't tend to take days off. And so there was just this point where my hands just went, you can't. And then in my downtime for entertainment, I play the flute, right? So it's like, oh my goodness, just kind of piling insult upon injury, something like that. So yeah, that voice to text app was worth every penny. I would just like to throw that out there. And I have a big thank you and a big shout out to everybody who kind of helped me come up with that, helped bring that idea to me and give me suggestions for different apps that I could look into and so forth. And I am deeply grateful. It has not just saved my hands, which are now feeling good and normal again, but it's also improved the quality of my work, because it occurred to me that typing stopped the flow of the work I was doing to a certain degree, like a little, but when I took that away, I'm like, oh, everything's flowing better. What do you know? Isn't that good? And so part of the story for the hands is flow, for the hands and wrists. And so is flow, because when there's inflammation, the way to get rid of the inflammation is to bring in that light, clean, refreshing, purifying, rejuvenating light of the sun. That would be the energy signature that we'd be bringing into the hands and into the wrists. That it has a little bit of that fire element to it, right? But the fire element, it's not really hot. It doesn't aggravate the inflammation, but it's because it's cooling. The early morning light is cooling, but it really starts to bring flow in. Of course, use your hand chakras, right? Even if it hurts, even if one of the hands hurts, you can use that hand on the other hand, it's okay. And any kind of propping up with pillows necessary will also help. But the important thing is the angle of the flow. It comes along with healing for conscience, and that all those points where the choice was made to favor material gains over consciousness. Again, like that inward and outward flow of the air, right? It's not the, here, most of the air comes out. In fact, all of the air comes out. Remember, I was talking about the inward and outward flow and how the flow toward the relative is into this body of constraints and boundaries. But you know what? Any air that a flute player blows into their flute actually literally comes back out again. It comes out the open holes. So it turns out that all the air goes back to wholeness, all of it. And this part, this area of boundaries and limitations and constraints is made to move. Look at all those mechanisms in there. This is made to move. All these keys, they do stuff, right? And so they all do stuff. They all do stuff. It's made to move. It's made to change. So we can't be too attached. And of course, the hands, or one of the functions, is to grip or hold or attach to the relative. So it's a little shift in there for the conscience of to shift like a flute player who wants to make the music come out so beautiful. They're like, well, I need to push a little bit more air up over the top of the mouthpiece and a little bit less in, or in this case, I need to push a little bit more, keep my balance of the flow of awareness, a little bit more orienting toward the infinitely expanded, unbounded ocean of bliss, and a little bit less oriented, a little bit less the priorities on the specifics, on the specific boundaries, because those are going to always be changing. Any attachments are just going to just create disappointment ultimately. And it's not that we shouldn't have attachments. Attachments to the expression of divinity in the relative are good. Expressing the divine in the field of the relative is good. And we need to be here in the relative, and we need to do our job as humans. It's very important. But when the carpal tunnel syndrome comes in, it becomes very difficult to grasp or hold on, right? So what becomes corrupted is the ability to have attachments, which is the body's like little funny, cute way that it messages us with stuff. And what was happening for me when I hurt my thumbs, I was too attached to answering too many emails. I was already pinched with so many emails I wasn't answering. And then I had to let go even more. That was really hard. But it turned out to be good in the end. It turned out to be just right. It's my heart. My heart's attached to connecting with you guys. That's the thing. And what I had to do is I had to let go a little bit of the relative material attachment, right? Of sending you emails and sending you pictures and, sending my love through the email form, and more let it be an inner connection that you just know that I'm here and that I really do care about you. I've been thinking, the lady who asked this question, I've been thinking about her so much as I went through this thing over the last couple of weeks. Like every day I thought about you. And I said, I want her to have all the healing that I got. I want you to have it too. So the inflammation is tied up with anger. That's what happened when I looked into the joints. I said, oh, there's anger in there. It's so angry because it was, because I was constantly falling behind. It was frustrating to feel like I was constantly falling behind. So I had to figure out a way to let go of that attachment that I have to give long, elaborate answers to everybody. I can't. And I had to let go of that. I have to let my heart flow without the long, elaborate answers. And then the text to voice to text helped a lot too. So those are different ways of addressing. And as far as the inflammation and the anger, I do have a knowledge base entry on anger that I recently rewrote. So you can look at that. And I think that should help answer any questions you might have about, yes, but how do I actually deal with my anger? Go look at that. It takes like 2 minutes to read through it. And then if you want to watch, there's some short videos and there's a healing, and it's a nice page, and it will bring you it will bring good. It will bring good if you want to check it out. Someone's having a birthday. Yes, there's 7 main types of crystal systems. Thank you to the lady who asked this question from St. Louis. She's mentioning about the 7 types of crystalline forms. And I love this comment. I really deeply appreciate your comment, because the limitations of the lips, because we're just talking making flute music, right, are that they're not that many shapes. Like I can't make a shape like, like this. I can't make a shape like this with my lips, right? I can make a circle and I could maybe make this oval shape, but I can't make a shape with all these different little points sticking out with just my lips. So that point is that there's 7 main types of crystal systems. This is her point, that have typical forms, and they're natural forms that are found universally, and they're also found through geometry and sacred geometry. The diamond, cubic, and they go from cubes to octahedron to spheres. Diamond also forces the others, include minerals to assume the cubic diamond structure, right? And one of the shapes, my flute teacher even said one of the shapes she makes with her mouth reminds her of a diamond shape. Because you kind of make it, she makes it flat on the bottom, and then she, like a cut diamond, she makes it kind of pointed on the top and sort of flat on the bottom. The other systems allow inclusions to take the form of their own grouping. Oh, more technical. I just got excited. Oh, I love your comment. Thank you. I'm so glad I got to read that. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I'm almost through all the questions. I know we're over time, but for those of you who are still with me, there's still a few of you with me. I think I'm just going to cruise through these questions kind of quickly. I do not know what jewelry you're wearing. The way I see it, and my computer is very old, not good resolution, it looks like dangling jewelry or angels. Oh, you're so adorable. Thank you. That's really adorable. Okay, so one lady is saying that she feels her thyroid a lot. We actually talked a little bit about thyroid yesterday. It's a gland, but it plays such a vital role in the digestive system. So the interface between the thyroid and the nervous system is that the better you're metabolizing, the better food metabolism is, the better nourished the nervous system is. And even though the brain does in no way take up 20% of the bulk of the physiology, it absolutely consumes 20% of the nutrients that you intake. So that's really the importance of the role of the thyroid, is to help keep the digestion in balance so that the nervous system is nourished. And when we went into the healing yesterday for the substantia nigra and the ventral tegmental area that are right up at the top of the brainstem, that was related to iron metabolism. So, and iron, as you can imagine, is it's a metal. It's a very heavy material. And so how it's metabolized is a big deal. And it's one of the key components in the production of dopamine in the brain. So that's that connection. And of course, at the subtle level, the devata of the nervous system and the devata of the digestive system, right? Because they formed in the womb together, like they have a really, really intimate, really powerful relationship with each other. And one of them is more like, the nervous system is more thread-like, right? Like lots and lots of threads, whereas the digestive system is like kind of at the other end of the spectrum. It's like the alimentary canal is just one big tube, sort of essentially, that runs through the body. Oh, one lady's saying that cuteness puppies and babies release dopamine. I would have to agree with you on that account. It's like heaven. It's like heaven being with a baby. It's just heaven. Oh yeah, one man is giving the example of children who grew up in households where smoking occurred, were exposed to really intense toxins, and that's just so very true. Oh, my dearest, here's a person who's saying, how does a person handle ADHD at the age of 45 years? Psychiatrist said he should go back on medication, don't want to. Thoughts are so scattered and brain zaps since being on prescription meds for 30 years and antidepressants as well. Okay, so I'm glad this is the last question. I'm glad this person asked this question because recently, two ladies who don't know each other, but they came to me with the same concern. And their concern was exposure to a prescription medication, which is often given for this type of, like Xanax, is like in the family of what they call benzodiazepine drugs. And I would just like to, because there's still, most of you are here, I would like to personally beg every one of you with all my heart, never, never, never take benzodiazepine in any form, please. I have seen suffering worse than death in the two women who I have who are fighting the addiction, and both of them only took it for like a few months. And I'm not going to go into descriptions here because of those of us who are a little sensitive to a degree of suffering that a human being, I had no idea that a human being could suffer as much as both of these women are. So I didn't even know it was humanly possible. I didn't even know. So the first thing I would just like to say, and this is like a message I have wanted to get out to the world, that if any doctor, and I looked it up online, and doctors just prescribe this stuff like it's been like a favorite drug to prescribe since the 1980s. So it's prescribed for all sorts of things. In fact, one of the women went to her doctor with a thyroid concern and was given benzodiazepine, a form of it. And it comes in many forms. So you have to be very careful because the benzodiazepine is like the name of the family of drugs. And then they have these like cutesy names on the surface that they give people. But yeah, it was a thyroid condition that, from my experience with energy healing, hand chakras help a lot. Diet, food choices help a lot. There are things you can do at the surface to help your thyroid. But don't ever take it. Don't, because they're coming off of it. One of them is able to come off of it. Anyway, I don't go into the details of these two ladies, but just saying one must be very, very careful of the types of drugs that are given for problems that are associated with mood, among other things. So like depression, like taking antidepressants. And so you must be so, so, so very careful. And I'm glad that you don't want to take the medication. I am validating your internal impulse that taking medication could be dangerous. And if you do choose to take, or if the doctor suggests, absolutely research which family that drug comes from. It's no joke. It's no joke. As for ADHD itself, feels as if they're traumas from early childhood that go very deep. And most children are born, magical and amazing. And there's certain types of stresses that people experience in early childhood. And I'm not saying that that's always the cause of ADHD, but it feels like there are components of that here. That it's almost like a little bit the opposite of the fibromyalgia. The fibromyalgia is like a hypersensitivity, and it comes from like this hypersensitivity to the environment, or maybe not the opposite, but like a cousin or something. of the fibromyalgia. With ADHD, there's also a hypersensitivity, but it gives rise to overwhelm in the system. And so the individual then pulls himself away from reading too much in the environment. So here is a download directly for the heart. It's just going directly to the heart area. From the mother of creation, to create stability and adaptability in both the autonomic nervous system as well as the heart energy center. It's going deep into the energy field of the physiology, clearing out all the habits and memory patterns and impressions that are like triggers for fear. And then the fear causes this reaction back. It's really just being that's doing everything. Being is doing everything. So it's not like we have to individually carry a great weight of responsibility for everything. We don't have to carry the weight for everything. Same for the fibromyalgia people. Being through you as the channel, as the instrument, being can do everything through the instrument of you. But as an individual, you're only responsible for your own actions. As I'm saying that, more, lots and lots of information coming through to support a rewiring of the autonomic nervous system especially, but also the whole nervous system. Also this area up the limbic system, up into the deep central area of the brain, right there. Balance, stability and adaptability and balance. These are the energies that are coming in. These are the ones that really nourish the nervous system and provide a platform for optimal functioning of the nervous system. Okay, guys, now we're getting a detailed question about the benzos. Yeah. Yeah. More benzo. Yeah. Yeah. Even dentists sometimes give it to people before a procedure. Yeah. So the rest of the questions were about benzodiazepine, and I'm actually not a doctor. What I know is I know how much people who have taken it, even for a short period of time, how much they suffer. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to go into great detail. You can see videos on YouTube. You can see videos of people struggling with it. It is just horrifying. It is horrible. Like I said, I had no idea the human being could suffer that much. It's really something. But progress is being made. Both my ladies are getting better. Both my ladies are weaning off. My fingers are crossed and my love goes out to them every day. And to all of you every day. And thank you to all of you for your, oh yeah, of course, my God, what a great webinar. What a sweet time we've had together. And look at you, you all stayed with me today. There's a little number count down there of how many people are with me. You all stayed to the end. Phenomenal. I love you. Thank you. That's amazing. That's amazing. So bless your hearts, each one of you. For all of my people that are on Total Access package or regular sessions, private consultations, I'll be seeing all of you on Monday. And yeah, have a beautiful spring, everybody, and everybody else will see you. Come back and join me for the next webinar, which is about addressing childhood trauma, which is where a lot of the deep seeds of suffering sit. So that should be a very interesting, webinar. So thank you very much, everyone. And I love you dearly. And I'm grateful that we had this time. Bye-bye. Have a great day or a great night, depending on where you are. Bye.